honorables ministres, secrétaires généraux et secrétaires principaux, distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, tout protocole dûment observé, c'est pour moi un grand honneur de prendre la parole devant vous ce matin à Abidjan pour marquer l'ouverture de l'Assemblée générale annuelle du mouvement ID for Africa. Permettez-moi tout d'abord d'exprimer notre appréciation au gouvernement de la Côte d'Ivoire, en particulier au ministère de l'Intérieur et à ONESI, pour leur collaboration dans l'organisation de cet événement. Je souhaite également reconnaître les autorités d'immigration pour leurs efforts et surtout remercier le peuple ivoirien pour sa chaleur et son hospitalité. So, merci beaucoup, Côte d'Ivoire. En ma qualité de PDG de ID for Africa, c'est un plaisir pour moi de souhaiter la bienvenue à tous les participants dans cette salle comme en ligne, à l'ouverture de l'édition 2026 de ID for Africa. Avec votre permission, je vais maintenant poursuivre en anglais. I will now continue in English. But before we continue, I must acknowledge the extraordinary circumstances under which many of us, many of you, arrived here this year. The current global situation, including the war in the Gulf, has severely disrupted flight routes, fuel availability, and transportation costs across Africa. The consequences are profound. A number of our delegates were ultimately unable to join us physically because flights were canceled or because they became overbooked. And for many who did make it, the journey here required rerouting across multiple countries, enduring lengthy delays, uncertainty, and hardship. Once again, Africa finds itself paying the price for someone else's war and bearing the consequences of geopolitical agendas that are not its own. And yet, you are here. That matters. I want to thank and salute every member of this community who refused to allow obstacles to stand in the way of this gathering, who refused to even allow the security barriers outside to stand in your way of coming here with enthusiasm. Your presence here is more than attendance. It's a declaration of commitment, a declaration of solidarity, a declaration that Africa is determined to build its digital future on its own terms. Together, we are unstoppable. Each year, when we gather, we're reminded that this meeting is not simply another event on the calendar. It's the annual convening of the Identity for Development community, where for over a decade now, we've come together to review the past year's progress and establish priorities for the year ahead. When this movement began in 2014, the objective was simple: to ensure that every person exists in the eyes of the state. For many years, we measured progress by inclusion, by enrollment, and by the effort to bring the invisible into visibility. That focus was necessary, and during this period, Africa made very good progress, and Thursday this week, in the playbooks, 13 countries will showcase their remarkable results. But as enrollment expanded, something equally important was happening. Countries were building the foundations of modern identity ecosystems, strengthening institutions, modernizing civil registration, enacting legal frameworks, providing identity verification platforms to public and private sectors, and developing lasting operational capacity. The advances we see today across so many countries deserve recognition. Much of that credit belongs to the ID for Africa community in this hall. Each of you has contributed to this progress, and before we continue, let us recognize this collective effort with a round of applause. Please, a strong round of applause for this community. But as will become clear at this AGM, the dialogue has evolved once again. Inclusion remains our moral anchor. It is non-negotiable. No society can claim legitimacy while any part of its population remains invisible. But inclusion alone no longer defines success. We're entering a new phase in the evolution of digital identity, one that calls for us to confront new priorities. In many ways, this reflects a natural maturation. After population registers are established, new expectations inevitably emerge. Citizens expect services. Institutions expect efficiency. And economies require trust at scale. Identity must evolve into a platform of enablement. Success is no longer measured by enrollment alone, but by what identity makes possible, how widely it is used, and how deeply it is integrated in the societal ecosystem. Under that light, identity systems can no longer remain mere administrative registries. They must become essential public infrastructure, accessible to all service providers, just like roads and electric power grid. Once identity assumes that role, the way we think about it must change. Infrastructure cannot be treated like a project. Projects have timelines. Infrastructure must endure. Projects are funded once. Infrastructure must be sustained. Projects can be completed. Infrastructure must be governed forever. This is why sustainability must now move to the center of our dialogue. We must move beyond the mindset of implementation toward the mindset of stewardship, a shift that will be reflected in today's plenary discussions. But sustainability also depends on value creation. Systems that are not used will not survive. Identity becomes sustainable when it enables real economic and social activity, and hence delivers value. The objective is not infrastructure for its own sake, but inclusive economic growth driven by digital transformation. This evolution brings us to the theme of this year's annual general meeting: digital identity from DPI to digital public ecosystems. Infrastructure is what we build. It makes digital interactions possible, but infrastructure alone does not create value. Value appears when institutions connect to it, when services are built upon it, and when people trust it and individuals use it. This dynamic environment, where technology, institutions, citizens, and services from both government and the private sector interact, is what we call the ecosystem. Moving from infrastructure to ecosystem is not a change of direction. It is a sign of maturity. This is not unique to digital identity. In nature, it is ecosystems, not isolated organisms, that sustain life. In economics, ecosystems are what enable sustained value creation. Progress comes from interaction, interdependence, and the ability to evolve. Digital identity must follow the same logic. It cannot stand alone. It must operate within a broader environment, spanning all sectors, including the private sector. Adopting a digital public ecosystem mindset is not about terminology. It's about understanding what it takes to build systems that endure. Going forward, we will use or DPE interchangeably. At the core of both is the word public. And if digital identity is a public instrument, then it must be governed as a public asset. ID for Africa's position on this matter is captured in our core identity governance principles. Utility without trust is dangerous. Scale without security is fragile. And adoption without safeguards is unsustainable. This is why governance must also stand at the center of our dialogue, alongside sustainability. And you could see now that the questions we face at this point are no longer only technical. They are institutional, they are societal, and no single actor can answer them alone. We need the full picture. We need the full dialogue. We need the full ecosystem. That's exactly what this year's program has been designed to bring together. Indeed, we believe Africa's digital identity journey has outgrown the confines of any single stakeholder. It has become an ecosystem enterprise, requiring coordination and clarity of roles. Every stakeholder essential to the legitimacy and sustainability must have a voice and must therefore be represented at this annual assembly. This is the commitment we made several years ago when we set ourselves the goal of empowering every voice, every choice. It was even printed on the back of the 2024 AGM badge. We must continue to recognize the responsibility of each actor. Identity authorities and ICT agencies increasingly act as co-stewards of national systems, which is why our ambassador bureaus were reformed 4 years ago to reflect that partnership. Relying institutions such as central banks, financial, and health authorities create demand and real use. Regulators and data protection authorities define the guardrails. Development partners support capacity and financing, and the private sector brings innovation and implementation experience. Civil society brings scrutiny and perspective. This is not fragmentation. I repeat, this is not fragmentation. What you're seeing is the natural evolution of a complex ecosystem of interdependent actors. The role of ID for Africa as a movement is to convene all the actors, to ensure that every voice is heard in proportion to its current responsibility, and to preserve the balance required for the ecosystem to remain legitimate, sustainable, and transparently governed. I'm therefore especially pleased to welcome this year a more balanced representation of stakeholders from across the digital identity ecosystem, including record participation from central banks, data protection authorities, and civil society organizations, alongside identity authorities, ICT ministries, and the institutions that form the backbone of this community. Now, allow me to highlight some defining feature of this year's program. I will start by sharing with you 5 indicators that underscore why this is not just another conference. First, 70% of our speakers come from African institutions. This is a record that we can all be proud of. Africa's voice is here, 70%. Second, 80% are actually senior decision makers. They hold director generals principal secretaries. So we are talking about the leadership speaking. Third, 143 unique institutions are on the program. It's not one or two that dominate. It's 143 unique and different institutions that are part of this knowledge experience. Fourth, this is a program designed for dialogue, not monologue. In many cases, one speaker connects across multiple sessions. In many cases, the topic is continued across multiple sessions. So it was by design, it's not redundancy, it's continuity. And finally, the ecosystem is deliberately balanced, ensuring that every voice has a place at the table, as I had committed. The agenda is structured around 2 days of plenaries, today and tomorrow, followed by 2 days of parallel symposium tracks, 6 full-day symposiums in total. That's a record as well. This structure allows us to remain together in this main hall for the strategic conversations while creating the depth needed to address the increasingly complex realities of digital identity ecosystems. Day one brings identity authorities and ICT authorities together as co-stewards of the digital identity agenda. We are going to focus on institutional transformation, sustainability, business models, and the challenges of operating and governing identity at population scale. In the afternoon, we'll have a keynote from Minister Ba and a fireside chat with Stella Mokan from the World Bank to talk about how the development agenda is evolving. We end the day with some emerging AI and ICT risks that we all should be aware of that accompany our evolution into DPI. So it's a very charged and exciting day, so stick around. I have to call your attention that we had to make some changes to the program to accommodate His Excellency the Vice President's schedule. So this morning, for example, PS1, the segment on S1 and S2, will start immediately after my speech, and then we will adapt accordingly. I'll explain to you as we go along what the changes are. So please do not assume that what's printed or even what's on the mobile app reflects what we have. However, we will have a break, networking break, where we open the exposition between 11 to 12. So that's 1 hour. But then we come back at noon to talk about the segments on business models and the future of identity authorities. So that we complete at 1:30, and then between 1:30 to 3:30, you will have a 2-hour, instead of 90 minutes, break for lunch and for networking. I sincerely apologize on behalf of the movement for any inconvenience these changes may have caused you, but I am sure you share our excitement about having His Excellency the Vice President with us today, as we do need the political buy-in for identity across Africa, and we need to be informing and we need to be helping the leaderships follow what the agenda is. So day 2 opens with the Solutions Forum. This year we have competitively selected 10 solution providers to present real deployments at population scale, not products. I'm really very, very excited about some of the content that they are disclosing, they are presenting. But in the afternoon, we introduce a new format we call the Frontline, which is designed to bring urgent issues, emerging risks, and calls for action that require the attention of the entire community. Intentionally, we've mixed the topics because we did not want people to decide, oh, I'm going to attend this, and then I leave because this is not directed at me. We want you across those eight sessions of the Frontline. There will be 8 organizations will be featured. It's an outstanding lineup. You will hear cutting-edge updates on digital identity from 3 distinct regions: Europe, India, and Latin America. So that's really good to have that perspective. You will also hear about 2 initiatives we are proud of and we continue to nurture. Some of you know this, the Africa Digital Identity Hackathon And then, of course, the Africa PKI Consortium. These are all Africa-initiated and Africa-led initiatives which have a lot of promise and potential. So excited to have those here being incubated at ID for Africa. You will hear about the human rights dimension of digital identity, pay attention to the issues and the concerns, as well as the big issues that are occupying the African data protection authorities, who are here in record number. Day 3 moves into full symposiums. In the main hall here, 13 countries will present their playbooks. A new feature this year, providing first-hand accounts of how national identity systems are being built in practice. In parallel, symposiums on cybersecurity and digital identity and finance will address 2 critical pillars of the ecosystem. So if you want general, learning how to do foundational, you'll be in the main hall. If you want to do cybersecurity, digital identity and finance, then you've got the 2 halls that are in the breakout sessions behind you. Day 4 continues with 3 parallel tracks with symposiums on legal identity and CRVS here in the main hall, on DPI and service delivery, including safeguards and human rights, and on emerging ecosystem technologies, including exciting developments in open source, verifiable credentials, and digital wallets. Because of the scale of the program, days 3 and 4 will operate using silent conferencing. Not sure if you're familiar with this concept, but you will become. It's actually lovely because it's total peace. All audio, both the floor language and interpretation in English and French, will be delivered through headsets, allowing multiple sessions to run simultaneously across the 3 halls without interference. So everyone must have a headset, even if you don't need interpretation, even if you are bilingual. I admit this is a demanding program, bringing together an exceptional number of contributors, world-class experts to whom we are deeply grateful for their time and valuable contributions. We're proud of both the caliber of this lineup and the depth of the content they will deliver. Please join me with a round of applause for all these speakers that are here with us. And please take advantage of the presence of this massive expertise to advance your reflections and benefit from their knowledge. In summary, the program reflects the full breadth of the journey we are currently on. It addresses sustainability, governance, and business models. It examines how digital identity enables real service delivery and how safeguards must evolve to preserve trust. It looks at the reform of civil registration and the continued effort to deepen inclusion. It confronts cybersecurity risks, explores the role of digital identity in finance, and examines the emerging ecosystems built on open standard, open source, verifiable credentials, and digital wallets. Before I close, let me remind everyone that our community also has its day, 16 September, ID Day, which is dedicated to celebrating the fundamental importance of identity. Each year, we choose a simple symbol to remind us why identity matters. This year's theme is My Identity, My Shadow. No one exists without a shadow, and no one should live without identity. Last year, my identity, my umbrella. Everyone needs one on a rainy day. We now emphasize the inseparability of our identity from our lives. Please be on the lookout for the campaign launch in the months leading to 16 September this year. In the meantime, you can join the ID Day Coalition partners. It's an impressive list of institutions that are advocating for the day. If you're not on that list, please make sure you join it. I want to close by recognizing that an assembly of this scale is only possible through the committed and collaboration of many partners across our ecosystem. Earlier, I expressed our gratitude to Côte d'Ivoire for its hospitality. Let me also acknowledge the country bureaus. The dedication of our ambassadors has been instrumental in mobilizing highly qualified national delegations and ensuring the program remains responsive to national priorities. We thank the leadership of our member states for empowering their country ambassadors to engage actively in the movement and for authorizing participation of nearly 1,000 government officials from across the continent. 1,000 African government officials are here. So we thank their governments for letting them be part of this experience. I also wish to express special thanks to the World Bank, our lead development partner, whose support this year has taken a very tangible form, as they are supporting the catering for the 4 days of the assembly. We're also grateful to the Gates Foundation and Co-Develop, whose support has helped us expand representation of women, civil society, and contributors engaged in open source initiatives. We also extend our sincere thanks to our knowledge partners for their intellectual contributions, to our patrons and this year's category sponsors, whose support underpins the essential services that make this AGM run smoothly, and to our exhibitors who are showcasing the world's latest innovations here in Africa. I encourage you to visit them. I encourage you to visit Hall 1. It's an amazing exposition of the latest and greatest. A very special acknowledgement goes to the team of the ID for Africa General Secretariat. It's through their professionalism, discipline, and tireless dedication that a gathering of this complexity can be conceived and delivered at the level of excellence you've come to expect from ID for Africa. Please join me with a round of applause for this dedicated and hardworking people. We are not an organization of 100 people. We're not an organization of 20 people. We're an organization of about 8 people, and they do all what you see. Thank you for recognizing them. And finally, my deepest thanks go to you, the participants, and the institutions you represent. This movement exists because you sustain it. Together, we are nurturing an enduring community, one that carries knowledge, experience, and responsibility to guide Africa's digital development journey. Let us approach the days ahead as stewards of that shared mission, learning from one another, speaking with candor and respect, and acting with confidence in Africa's ability to define its own path. Let me leave you with this assertion. The future will not be written for Africa. It will be written by Africa, for Africa, and in Africa. Thank you for listening. Now we are ready to move directly into the first portion of PS1, Plenary Session 1, which is the institutional reform of the identity authorities. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have the lineup after the host country welcome speeches, but because of the schedule of the Vice President, we had to adjust our schedule. So we move 2 segments ahead of the program, and then we come back after His Excellency delivers his speech. So I'd like to call on the panelists from PS1 S1. I think Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Morocco. Please advance to the stage. Apologies.
Zimbabwe arise, the time is now.
Please welcome Engineer Abisoye Coker Odusoto, Director General and CEO of the National Identity Management Commission and ID for Africa Ambassador for Nigeria. Ago Christian Kodia, Director General, National Agency for Civil Registration Identity, ONESI, and ID for Africa Ambassador, Côte d'Ivoire. Dr. Fred Bedzra, Deputy Executive Secretary, National Identification Authority, Ghana. Mohsin Yadju, Director, Morocco EID Project, General Directorate for National Security, DGSN, and ID for Africa Deputy Ambassador, Morocco. And Aristide Ajinaku, Director General, the National Agency for the Identification of Persons, ANIP, and ID for Africa Ambassador for Benin. So what we are going to do, there are 10 countries that are going to be back-to-back. I have here 5 countries. We're going to introduce them to you. Then we'll bring in another 5 countries. We're going to introduce them to you. Each will have 5 minutes to share an insight and share a lesson or something strategic about their country journey on digital identity. However, this is more like an advertisement or a prelude for the playbooks. They will come back on Thursday. Others will join them from their country, and they will share with you the significant details about their experience. So here, this is not about to go in depth. This is about just for you to know that these 10 countries were selected based on analysis of the state of development of where they are and how far they have come along and whether their lessons are relevant to the community. So in fact, we will not have any Q&A in this part, just 5 minutes each. Then we bring in the other panel, 5 minutes each, and then we will have the Vice President will be on time, and then we will continue the discussion with some members of them on the business model after the Vice President's visit. I apologize for the reshuffle that we had to do. So, without any further delay, I would like to invite, staying on your chair, I would like to invite Ambassador Odusote to start the discussion, start the overview of the Nigeria experience.
Good morning, fellow delegates and my fellow national ambassadors, and it is an honor to be here again for the 3rd time in a row. And I want to congratulate Dr. Atik and the team for putting together another successful event. So I'm just going to quickly speak to the NIMS 1.0 architecture, which is our national identity management system. When Nigeria first began the implementation of its national identity infrastructure, the immediate national priority was very clear. Eliminate fragmented identity systems, provide uniqueness and deduplication, establish a trusted foundational identity database, protect citizen data integrity, and also ensure that we ensure central governance and control. We had a very closed-loop system, which was designed as a highly controlled and relatively closed system for Nigeria. Now, that worked for us at the foundation stage. And what we're actually doing right now is to ensure that we upgrade to NIMS 2.0. Now, NIMS 2.0 is a little bit different. It adopts the open source model, where it ensures that the application is interoperable, it's scalable, it's API driven, and we're also able to ensure that it's a more secure platform, and it also encourages ecosystem participation, which is what we really want to do. So at the initial stage when the system was built, it was built from a vendor lock-in perspective. But what we noticed is that some of the lessons learned is that with vendor lock-ins, it becomes very expensive to maintain those systems. And to, in the course of trying to upgrade it, it costs a lot of money. So open source will, for the long term, will be a much more adaptable approach for us, because we notice one thing that a lot of the African state countries complain about is the cost of building identity infrastructure, and that has sort of created a lot of, bottlenecks around for us. So that's one big focus. I want to also speak to another key area for us, which is slightly related, but it focuses on the cards. We started the EID cards in 2015. That's our general multipurpose card, which is a combination of identity and payment. But what was our major bottleneck was that it was a vendor locked in approach. And so what we have now done is we have revised that model, and we have now actually collaborated with an indigenous payment rail known as Afrigo, which will then allow us the flexibility to be able to adopt all the applets that we want and all the wallets that we need to include on the card, and encourage local participation on it. So which means that we have no more inflexibility. So we have reduced flexibility now, or increased flexibility around ensuring that our cards are now owned locally, and we can then maintain the cost of those cards, because we've also had, we're producing the chips locally now. The semiconductor company we have gone with, which is the first in West Africa, has partnered with the likes of NXP. So we're able to produce those cards locally, thereby reducing the cost of shipping and logistics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And as I said, you will be able to hear the playbook in lots of details and in several other presentations from Nigeria. This is just an introduction, just to say this is the Identity Authority. We move on to the head of the Identity Authority in Côte d'Ivoire, Ambassador Kodia.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Atix. Bonjour à tout le monde. Soyez la bienvenue. J'espère que vous avez apprécié votre première journée en Côte d'Ivoire, et vous souhaitons tous un très bon séjour en Côte d'Ivoire. Pour parler de la Côte d'Ivoire, déjà, on va tout de suite voir comment est-ce que tout a commencé. Parce qu'en Côte d'Ivoire, le système a montré qu'il fallait tout simplement avoir un système robuste, parce que la Côte d'Ivoire avait déjà un mécanisme d'identification. Mais au regard de l'évolution des choses, ce système a montré quelques limites. Et donc, le gouvernement a décidé d'avoir un système qui repose sur 3 principaux éléments. Le premier élément, c'est une volonté très forte, une volonté politique très forte. Ensuite, il y a eu une gouvernance institutionnelle et des investissements solides et durables. Je vais rentrer rapidement dans chacun de ces éléments, mais on voit que ce sont ces 3 approches-là qui ont permis aujourd'hui à la Côte d'Ivoire d'avoir un système d'identification qui est simple, qui est vraiment une administration solide et qui se présente comme une infrastructure stratégique de l'État de Côte d'Ivoire en appui à son développement. Le premier élément sur lequel je vais venir, sur les 3 que j'ai dit, c'est d'abord expliquer la volonté politique. Comment est-ce que la volonté politique a été très forte? Vous savez tous que la Côte d'Ivoire a connu des moments de crise. Et la crise était basée aussi sur beaucoup d'éléments, dont les questions d'identité, les questions de citoyenneté ont posé de réels problèmes. Il y a aussi l'enjeu sécuritaire. Vous voyez que l'enjeu sécuritaire, au regard de tout ce qui se passe dans notre sous-région, a montré qu'il fallait aussi avoir un système d'identification très solide. Il y avait aussi la nécessité de maintenir une cohésion sociale, c'est-à-dire comment faire un système d'identification qui n'exclut personne et qui ne met personne de côté, ou qui ne donne pas une stigmatisation des citoyens en fonction de leur origine. Et enfin, la nécessité de moderniser l'État, c'est-à-dire de faire en sorte que l'État puisse arriver vers une administration zéro papier. Donc, ce sont ces éléments-là qui ont milité en faveur du fait que le sujet a été porté au plus haut niveau de l'État, et ce qui a permis justement d'avoir une vision commune autour de cette question, d'avoir une mobilisation interministérielle et une continuité dans les réformes. Une mobilisation interministérielle parce que vous allez voir que pour la question d'identification, on a le ministère de la Santé, on a le ministère de la Justice, on a le ministère de l'Intérieur et de la Sécurité, on a le ministère des infrastructures numériques. Donc, on a tous ces ministères-là qui tournent autour de la question de l'identification en premier plan et il a fallu les moderniser, tous les mettre ensemble pour qu'on puisse avoir quelque chose de solide. La continuité de la réforme, ça veut dire qu'on a eu une institution qui a été mise en place, qui est l'Office national de l'état civil et de l'identification, qui est une institution qui permet d'avoir toutes ces réformes-là et d'assurer leur continuité. Donc, à travers la création d'une agence, d'un office unique, qui est l'ONESI, on a permis de centraliser toutes ces missions de l'État, d'assurer la continuité administrative et puis de renforcer la souveraineté des données parce que là, il y a une institution qui porte ces données-là et qui les protège. Donc, l'ONESI est devenue ainsi une institution durable au service de l'État. Donc, ce n'est pas quelque chose qui est un projet simple, mais c'est une institution qui est réglementaire et qui est assise pour faire cette continuité. Ensuite est venue la question de la clarification des rôles. Parce que quand vous avez plusieurs acteurs dans cet écosystème, il faut pouvoir justement clarifier les rôles pour que les gens ne se marchent pas sur les pieds. Et là, cette clarification des rôles a permis, dans le cadre de l'écosystème de l'identité, de savoir qui est en charge de l'état civil, qui fait l'enrôlement, qui fait la production des titres et qui sécurise ces titres-là. Ensuite, il y a des organes qui sont là aussi pour faire la promotion des services électroniques et numériques pour que l'identité qui a été créée soit utilisée au service de la population. Donc, on a la question de clarification de rôle. Cela a permis d'éviter des conflits de compétences. Aujourd'hui, on sait que l'ONESI est en charge d'eux, on sait que l'ANSUT est en charge d'eux, la CENAM est en charge de l'ANSUT, c'est une organisation qui est dans le domaine de la technologie, de l'accès universel au système de la technologie. Et comme le docteur Attic l'a rappelé, le bureau est composé justement de ces trois grands acteurs majeurs, dont celui qui est dépositaire de l'identité, la consommateur d'identité qui est la Caisse nationale d'assurance maladie et l'ANSUT qui permet d'avoir ça vers les autres. Donc, ça améliore vraiment la rapidité et améliore l'efficacité opérationnelle. Ça permet d'éviter aussi des lenteurs administratives. Enfin, on a bâti le système en Côte d'Ivoire sur des investissements structurants. Donc, il y a un investissement permanent qui est là et qui est la base de l'identité qui permet de faire en sorte que le système continue toujours d'être maintenu avec un investissement qui est pris dans le budget de l'ONESI. Donc, l'État consacre un budget au niveau de l'ONESI pour s'assurer que la question de l'identité avance. Et enfin, on a la question de la confiance des citoyens. Il fallait maintenant créer une confiance pour que les citoyens aient confiance à tous ces documents, créer la confiance dans l'écosystème. En conclusion, on voit qu'en Côte d'Ivoire, on a un leadership qui a été vraiment affirmé au haut niveau. On a un mandat institutionnel clair confié à l'ONESI et on a une vision à long terme. Je pense que lors du playbook, chacun des structures ici pourra venir pour vous donner en détail comment nous avons fait, mais c'est ce qui nous permet aujourd'hui de pouvoir mettre l'identité au service de l'économie et du développement. Et dans le playbook, je pense qu'on aura beaucoup à vous présenter. Je vous encourage vivement à venir et à voir le playbook pour voir ce que la Côte d'Ivoire peut vous présenter et sûrement que ça peut être un modèle ou une source d'inspiration. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Ambassador. We'll continue with Dr. Fred Bedzra with the perspective from Ghana. Again, high level, because we're preparing you for things to come.
Thank you. As a lot of you might be aware already, Ghana has registered over almost 20 million people over the last 8 years. But that is not what I want to share. That is scale, and a lot of countries have scaled. What I would want to share with you are the governance choices that we have made over the years that have enabled the Ghana ID system to survive regime changes, to survive donor exits, and be at the maturity level it is at as we have it today. Right from the onset, Ghana was clear in what we want the card to do. We want the card to be the mandatory single source of truth for all transactions that require identification of persons. We want it to be the mandatory card in banking transactions, in SIM card registrations, in registration of passports, amongst others. But once you do this, there is a risk of exclusion Of course, the mission of ID for Africa is inclusion, and we would not sacrifice this mandatory recognition of the card for the inclusion. So what we had to do was to create pathways to enable people to be included. That is to create adjudication pathways, because the system can reject people who are citizens, but through no fault of theirs, a technological system can reject these people during the registration process. Then we have the vulnerable, who do not have the primary documents, such as the birth sets that are required for the ID registration. And of course, we have people who, through no fault of theirs, have their biometrics rejected. So we created an adjudication pathway to enable everyone who suffers any of these aforementioned circumstances to be able to appeal and get the issues resolved. But once you are doing that, then you are going to sacrifice speed. So there is a trade-off between speed, registering people very quickly, and also enabling that everyone else is included. Because the process that you would go through to appeal and get onto this card is going to slow you down. But you want to create a legal finality with the card to be able to withstand any invalidation in the courts in the future, because we made a choice that it should be the single source of truth for every transaction that requires identification of people. So that trade-off between speed and scale is also what we want to share, that you should not just be looking at speed of registration, getting a lot of people registered within a very short period of time. You should create the pathways to enable that your card matures, becomes robust, and will withstand any regime change, and will withstand any donor exits, and remain the robust card that is meant to be. So basically, this is what I would want to share. This year, we are not participating in the playbooks, but the maturity we've achieved with the cards has enabled us focus on other critical areas like cybersecurity and enablement of payment on the card, which we will share with you in more detail on Thursday. And on Tuesday, tomorrow, our technical partners would also go into the detail of how far the journey of implementation of the Ghana card. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We continue to Mohsen Yadjou from Morocco.
Merci, Dr. Ater. Donc, l'expérience marocaine en matière de gestion de l'identité numérique est le fruit d'une vision pragmatique ancrée sur les réalités de nos institutions d'un côté et les besoins ou les attentes de nos concitoyens d'un autre. Alors ce parcours-là de définition de la stratégie nous a mené, nous sommes arrivés à une conviction fondamentale qui est que réussir une transformation digitale de niveau national ne peut pas réussir systématiquement en coupant avec en faisant une fracture avec le passé. C'est cette genèse un petit peu de notre réflexion du projet que je veux partager aujourd'hui avec vous, qui nous a mené jusqu'au choix de l'élément qui, à mon avis, est le plus important. C'est le cœur battant un petit peu de notre approche, qui est l'architecture d'identité. Alors, le choix de cette architecture d'identité, depuis le tout début du projet, faisait partie de l'arbitrage le plus déterminant dans notre situation. Nous sommes dans un domaine de l'identité où l'innovation technologique fait en sorte que nous sommes tentés de faire table rase de l'existant et de tout rénover, de se baser sur des solutions à partir de zéro. Alors, au Maroc, nous avons fait le pari de la continuité nous avons choisi de bâtir un écosystème sur l'existant. C'est un choix qui nous permet de bénéficier d'un capital de confiance institutionnel qu'on n'aurait pas pu avoir autrement. Alors, il ne s'agit pas là d'un choix de la simplicité ou de l'économie. Il s'agit plutôt de la capacité à faire évoluer des systèmes de confiance dont vous avez parlé tout à l'heure, du monde physique vers le monde numérique. Je m'explique. Alors, nous avons fait le choix de capitaliser sur des systèmes d'information qui ont déjà fait leurs preuves. C'est le système notamment de gestion de la carte nationale d'identité. C'est le choix de se baser sur un élément, sur un support qui dispose déjà d'un cadre juridique incontestable, d'un côté, et d'une légitimité ancrée sur le quotidien du citoyen marocain. Il faut savoir que la carte nationale déjà était émise par la DGSN depuis les années 50 et constituait la base de tout échange, de toute transaction dans le monde physique. Donc il s'agissait uniquement d'étendre cet usage-là vers le monde digital. Alors qui dit continuité, ce n'est pas incompatible avec modernisation. Donc nous avons établi aussi une modernisation structurelle de la façon dont nous gérons les données. C'est ce qui nous a mené à faire le choix du schéma identitaire. Nous avons fait le choix du système, du modèle décentralisé, parce que nous pensons que ça nous a donné des éléments de sécurité et de protection des données personnelles au niveau de très hauts standards internationaux. Des niveaux, on a écarté les schémas identitaires centralisés pour le risque que cela, que nous avions identifié comme potentiel de fuite de données, notamment massive. Alors, ce modèle-là, ce choix, cette stratégie nous a montré qu'il est possible de faire marier une continuité qui nous donne une légitimité institutionnelle avec une modernisation des infrastructures et le choix de ce système-là décentralisé qui ne vient pas là pour changer un petit peu le fonctionnement des infrastructures de l'écosystème marocain, mais qui vient compléter, ajouter une couche de confiance à nos institutions. La preuve, le fruit de ce schéma qui a été adopté, c'est les plus de soixantaine de partenaires qui ont opté pour notre solution avec plus de 75 services et qui montrent un petit peu que la continuité est pour nous le chemin le plus rapide vers l'adoption. Adoption que je pense c'est ce que nous cherchons tous en tant qu'autorité de l'identité. J'invite tout le monde à voir de plus en détail un petit peu ce modèle marocain et son fonctionnement lors des playbooks. C'est le 3e jour, je pense,
Oui.
pendant la matinée.
Merci beaucoup, Ambassador Yadjou. Okay, and then just quickly, finally, for this segment, we will hear from Aristide Adjinaku, who is Director General from Benin.
Good morning, everyone. What I want to share with you today is the notion of responsibility. Who is responsible for identity? I will say that we have the same situation in many countries. When we started our reform in Benin, the answer was unclear, or rather everyone, that means no one. We had a fragmented system. What does it mean for us? Birth certificates were issued at municipal level. ID cards were issued at prefecture level. Database, they don't exist. So they are not connected. And by the way, they're not connected to services. And then the result was predictable. There were many people without identity. There are people without several identities and sometimes with different names. Not because people were, I would say most of them want to cheat the system, but because The system allowed it. So how do you build a country in such a situation? How do you protect your citizen? And above all, how do you build trust in your country? So we ask a simple question. Who is responsible? It cannot be the technology. It cannot be the database. And we made a simple decision, not a technical one, a structural decision. We decided to assign responsibility. Now in Benin, it's clear. One institution, ANIP, the National Agency for Identification for Person. This agency is directly attached to the presidency. I repeat, directly attached to the presidency. And this agency is responsible for what? Civil register, identity management, national population register, and above all, electoral register. And guess what? On top of that, the Director General of this agency, who I am, has legal authority as National Civil Register. It changed everything. But this was not easy to put in place. We had many challenges to face because we had to reorganize mandates, to challenge institutional habits, and I will say to support, at least to face the notion of centralization. I heard about Morocco right now, decentralization approach. But in Benin, we had to manage a centralization approach. This means, on our side, I will say that both legally and operationally, accountability is unified. So we understood something. If you want to make a system sustainable, you need clear responsibility. And once this is clarified, we can talk about technology, we can talk about interoperability, we can talk about legal process, we can talk about database, all of those. And the results today are tangible in Benin. We have a unique, trusted source of identity data, which has, I will say, 98% of the population, which is huge. We have a unique identifier for each person, every single person. And we have a continuous life cycle from birth to death and linked with your unique ID. And because also, I don't know if I need to say because, but we have fewer duplicates and no more frauds today. So the biggest, I would say, the biggest impact is today that we have trust from the institution, trust from the citizen, and trust in the system itself. So here is our lesson. Technology can build a system, but only institution can make it work. Today, our institution foundation are there, the trust is there, we are connecting our identity system today to the public and the private service. This is our way, our contribution to the development of our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to do a quick change of scene on the panel. We are going to thank the panelists who will be coming back. Some of them will be coming back for the data governance and for the decentralization of trust segment after the Vice President does his speech. And we open the convention, the exposition. But all of these countries will be coming back tomorrow and the day after in various different sessions, including the playbooks. So please thank them while I ask, please thank them with a round of applause while I ask the next panel to come on stage. Yorehezi Michael, the Executive Director from the National ID Program. an ID for Africa ambassador, Ethiopia. Rosemary Kisimbo, the executive director of the National Identification and Registration Authority, NIRA. Dr. Belio Kipsang, the principal secretary, State Department of Immigration and Citizen Services, Kenya. Tulani Mavuso, Deputy Director General, Department of Home Affairs and ID for Africa Ambassador, South Africa. Edson Guye, Director, ID Management, National Identification Authority, NIDA, and ID for Africa Ambassador, Tanzania. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Same routine. We're going to ask you for a very high level insight and of course a plug to your playbook where you're going to be giving the details. So we'll start with you, Yodehe, quickly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joseph. And before I talk briefly about the Ethiopian Digital ID program, I just wanted to thank the ID for Africa as a community and the ID for Africa AGM. For us as Ethiopia, we've been participating in this conference, I believe, starting 2017. 2019, since I was personally involved, and with each conference, with each AGM that we've had, we've not only been here sitting, learning, but we've been forming a community. We attribute our success as the Ethiopian Digital ID program greatly to what we've learned as part of this ecosystem, as part of this movement. So a round of applause to the ID for Africa movement.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, that being said, when we launched our pilot program back in 2021-22, we had a pilot project which focused, the objective was to register 100,000 people with digital IDs. But when we're launching a very small pilot compared to the population of Ethiopia, which is around 120 million people, within that 100,000, we were thinking of authentication. We were saying 100,000 is a small number, but it could be 100% of a segment of a certain agency. It could be 100% of the customers of a certain service provider. So authentication was something that we were thinking of since the early stage. I remember when we had 1 million people with digital IDs, we have about 5 or 6 agencies already linked to FIDA and leveraging it for KYC. 1 million, yes, it's a small number, but we still believe starting the authentication early had a long way to go. And now we have 43 million customers. We call them customers. They're technically citizens and residents of Ethiopia, but they're not just a record in a database. We're offering something more. We're saying this digital ID is going to serve you to access services. You're going to leverage it in your day-to-day convenience and ease of doing business. We also chose an open architecture, an open source platform, API-driven modular platform, which really helped us, ensuring technology sovereignty, not only data sovereignty. These are important considerations for most of our peer African countries. We also said, when we focus on technology ownership, it's not an easy road. We could bring in a lot of partners to do the job for us, but we chose the longer way, but the more sustainable way of this technology ownership. We also said we need multiple use cases. At first, when we launch it, we need to have meetings, we need to have official letters exchanged between us and the relying party to be onboarded. Now, a private company in Ethiopia, say they're renting a bike on the street, they can connect to the FIDA ecosystem and leverage it to offer their services. You barely need a meeting, you barely need to know anyone. All we ask for to become a relying party is, number one, you have to be a legal company, an established legal company, and number two, your platform has to be secure, so you need to bring an audit certificate, cybersecurity certificate. We only need these two things. This means a lot of startups, a lot of private companies, they don't need to be pitched to, they don't need to be sold the idea of the benefit of having a record with 43 million people in it to scale up their business. So this onboarding has become very easy. Now a lot of private companies startups, they genuinely believe by linking to the digital ID ecosystem, they can become the next unicorns, the next company with millions, tens of millions of customers. So that the onboarding cost has been made very easy. And now we're not only scaling, but also changing our governance model. Dr. Joseph at the beginning was talking about going from a project into infrastructure means sustainable. So our governance model is now evolving. It's evolving from a program office to state-owned enterprise model, where we're generating revenue. We're learning from the likes of Uganda and a lot of other peer African countries where they have been generating revenue sustainably to help scale, to help innovate. So our governance model is changing, and we're making the ecosystem, we're sensitizing them that very soon we'll start charging you a very small fee. We're not greedy. We're starting very small because we want to create the appetite, develop the ecosystem, and also enable our partners to offer services that do not really affect the pockets of the citizen.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you will have a playbook on Thursday in detail. Okay, Rosemary, we have to stay on time because the Vice President is coming. Give her. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tik, for bringing the diversity and culture and beauty of Africa together every year. The diversity that is represented in this room represents the diversity that we see in technology and growth across the continent. Uganda has been at identification since 2014. So we started out with a vendor-locked service, and we registered 60.5% of the population by the time we decided in 2024-25 to move on to an open source platform called MOSIP. This change was not as simple as it sounds. We had already achieved maturity. We had 109 verifying partners. We had different services across the life cycle of a person. So one of the key bottlenecks we experienced in this journey was what I will call Uganda's migration dance. Dance is at the heart of African culture. Every function, every celebration, every sad has a dance to it. I'm told in Ivory Coast, the most difficult dance is called the Zawoli. I dare say migration for us was like the Zawoli. So it began with the decision by government that we were not going to reissue a new ID to everybody, a new identification number. So government took a firm decision that much as we were migrating to a new technology platform, we were to maintain the same NIN as the one a person had in their previous identification. That was to anchor inclusion, reduce confusion, but also determine the continuity of identification. The second act in our dance was the decision to try out the dance before the main act, what developers and technology partners call a test or a proof of concept. So this took assembling of many actors to try and move just 100,000 records from where we were in the old system to where we wanted it to be in the new system. So the second step of the dance was just that. We moved just 100,000 records to where we wanted it to be. In our dance, we discovered that we needed a new data center that had not arrived due to procurement delays. So the third step in our dance was to obtain the services of a third party, a non-government entity, to avail 420 terabytes of data and 6 terabytes of compute. So that was a key third step in our dance. And it was a nightmare in itself. It involved making connectivity afresh and all that. I won't get into the detail because we have the day for that. So one key step in our dance, the third one, was to acquire the resources before the main procurement. The fourth step in our dance was to come up with what we call the data migration strategy. The strategy was a lesson in practice of dance. What is on paper and what eventually happened were closely related, but not exactly the same. So we purposed to do a mass migration before we started the rollout of the new system. Apparently, things didn't work like it was on book. So what happened is that we had to come up with what we called a hybrid, which was mass migration of 200, 300,000 records a day, together with what we called on-demand migration, meaning that if you came to the center and your record had not yet been migrated, we would migrate you on demand. So that was a key step in our dance. And the last step in our dance was what we called the continuous troubleshooting and trying to solve all the areas that came with migration. The dance was successful. Today we have a running system that represents 74.9% of our population. And here we are to continue the dance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosemary. Great. Dr. Kipsong.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think from the onset, I would want to most sincerely thank ID for Africa for this very critical continental platform that is shaping the future of identity. Again, I would want to most sincerely acknowledge the role and the work that the Cote d'Ivoire government has done in hosting us here today. But the most important thing that I would want to say is that identity systems are central to inclusion, security service delivery, and economic participation, not only in our own country, but in Africa. So as we looked at it as Kenya, the most critical thing was to look at the policy direction, and we adopted a deliberate public institutional reforms that would be able to bring in coherent, trusted, and responsive identity ecosystem. The most important thing was to shift from fragmented systems to a unified life cycle-based system. Among the core lessons that we have today is the life cycle identity approach, where the identity spans from birth through maturity and exit at death, so that you can be able to see the 360 aspect of life, and emphasizing mainly on continuity, consistency, and long-term usability of identity. In the last 2 years, we've been implementing what we call Maisha number and the Maisha card. We introduced a Maisha number, which is a unique personal identifier that is issued as birth, but the same number remains, and at majority, then it becomes a Maisha card, which now becomes identity at majority. And the fundamental thing is that the number is an identity, and the card is only a credential. And it enables authentication through biometric and digital systems. So these are some of the areas that we shall go detail. But again, integration across government is very important. And the unique personal identifier is used in the education system through what we call Kenya Education Management Information System. It is used in our healthcare system through the Social Health Insurance Fund, and also used in the taxation system through our Revenue Authority. What this happens is that it enables seamless identification and experience across all events in one's life. Again, I would want to mention that integrated population register is what now accommodates all our aspects of identification, so that there is a single source of truth, there is a single point that you can go to. And I would want to mention also that on the Maisha card, it is a first in, first out approach, where our original ID that was started in 1978 remained valid as we continue to introduce the new system. But the most important thing again is that the the key principle is that trust must be built. 2 is that inclusion must precede any enforcement so that nobody is left out. Once again, on issues of governance, legal framework, which again we shall go deep into, is that we must ensure eligibility, that inclusivity is very important. Even those who may be having challenges of biometrics, we must get alternative ways in which we can identify them. So as I conclude is that the identity is framed in a way that it is universal, it is reliable, and it is accessible, so that service delivery is continuous. We commit ourselves as a country to the African continent that we shall continue, 1, in collaboration, 2, in shared learning, and 3, in building resilient, trusted, and inclusive identity system. And I would want to conclude that as we move forward, identity is not merely a marker of who we are. It is a gateway to participation, opportunity, and dignity. Once again, by strengthening identity system, and we thank ID for Africa, we lay the foundation for more inclusive, responsive, and resilient society across Africa. Again, we shall go into detail in the engagement in the playbook on Thursday.
You will be in the playbook, so no problem. The Vice President has arrived, so I would ask Tulani Mavuso and Edson Goya to please be quick so I can go down the stage. So please give us your high level.
No, thank you very much. Well, at a high level, I would like to say that we have developed obvious identity system over a period of time, where you've started with systems that only dealt with biographic details, moving to biometric details. I think what is more important for me is that any identity system, for it to be reliable, you should be able not just to deal with enrollment issues, but verifications become important. That is why digital society these days, they demand a lot of verification from us, whether it's a financial institution, whether it's for government services. So our important investment is the ability to do verifications, whether at different types of biometrics. So there's an intervention that we have made to ensure also that those systems are available 99.9%, because if you are not able to verify, so it means the services will be denied. So I think we have actually traveled a very long journey. Where we are, we want also to ensure that not only are we utilizing limited biometrics, but facial recognition becomes one of the greatest investments any country that can make in its verification ecosystem. So we're making a robust ecosystem to be able to ensure that we contribute to actually the economy, because let me tell you, digital systems are the core driver of the economy. If we are able to do right as identity authorities in terms of investing in those, we are able to grow our economy, because we'll ensure that even those that who are traveling, those that who are in our social service system, those who are transacting with financial institutions, those are the right people that the financial services can be able to verify. So verification is key in every ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Atik, for giving us to share Tanzanian experience. Shortly, if I could offer one piece of advice based on Tanzanian experience, it would be, do not develop identity system in isolation or in bubbles or in silos. We have learned that as Tanzania, the real value of ID comes when ID is connected or is connected to their daily lives, like the use of SIM card registration, healthcare, and also in the bank opening. Tanzania, we started registration in 2012, and we started as other government. The project was enrollment project. So the enrollment project is the government pushing the project to the citizen. But in 2019, the government did a bold decision where we start linking SIM card registration with the national ID. So this shift make an increase of 25% of registration within a year. And before we started the SIM card registration, the population or registration was less than 10 million. But now we have 27.1 million registration because of the use case. So if you want to develop an ID system, don't do it as a project. Do it as connected ID ecosystem, because the national ID is the foundation or the key of everything. Because people, they don't want a strong system. They don't want a strong legal framework. They need the value from the ID ecosystem. So if you want ID ecosystem to be sustainable, you should make sure that the ID bring value to our people, bring value to a citizen. They can use ID to access their daily life operations, like opening a bank account, access to all healthcare services. So these are the key to the ID system. So in our case, we have learned a lot in a hard way, because more than 7 years, we are pushing citizens to register. But when we introduce a strong use case, the game changed. The game changed. Why? The people now demand us to register and issue credential for them to use as a enabler or a key to all the services. So this change of use case, or this change of ID as a foundation, give us make us to change the way we think, the way we design our ID. So soon, as Tanzanian, we are forced now to review the revision of registration age. Currently, the age is 18 years and above. Because the ID now is the foundation for the ecosystem, we are required to revise the legal frameworks and also to change the systems, to change the cards, so that we can be used by our citizens to access services. Because of time, we have a playbook on Thursday, day 3. So we'll share a lot on that day. Thank you, Dr. Atik.
Thank you very much. Please stay where you are. We're going to continue this session with the Vice President's arrival. I will descend to welcome the Vice President, but we will continue.
Wakati umefika, the time has come for every nation to own ID. Wakati umefika, the time has come for every nation to own